I haven't mentioned this until now, but my first book story was written based on my own experiences. The audience murmured in shock at this sudden confession. What? My parents, confused by the situation, were startled by the audience's reaction. I intend to ensure they never lift their heads to walk outside again. Dressed in a pure white wedding gown, I made my first and last challenge against my parents who had betrayed me. My name is Violet Howard. I am 30 years old. A life full of ups and downs and complex turns, that's the perfect way to describe it. I have a brother named Barton, who is 3 years older than me. Since childhood, with his fair skin, large eyes, and rosy cheeks, my parents would proudly show him off as if he were an angel. Even as he grew, he retained his beauty, excelled in his studies, and had such a kind personality that he was always the center of attention. In contrast, I was born large, with small eyes, and was often mistaken for a boy. I was deeply hurt when I overheard my parents laughing about how I wasn't the angelic baby they had hoped for, but instead, they were disappointed by how ugly I was. I was constantly compared to my older brother, both in appearance and performance, only having my faults and failures pointed out, never receiving any praise. Over time, I was tasked with most of the household chores, and my clumsiness would only anger my mother, who did nothing but scold me. My father, often away on business trips, showed little interest in me even when he was home, simply following my mother's orders without ever standing up for me. Although he didn't express anger like my mother, he never initiated conversation and treated me as if I didn't exist. When the family went out, they would leave me behind, saying things like, "Your test scores haven't been good, so stay home and study, or there's laundry piling up, so stay and do it." My brother, tall and slender with a refined face, was clearly different from me, as I was chubby and short. Covering my face with long bangs and walking with a stoop, I felt like an embarrassment for my parents to be seen with in public. Barton was the only one who was kind to me, realizing early on that our parents' treatment towards me was wrong, and he protected me, but that did not improve how I was treated within the family. When Barton was preparing for the entrance exam of a prestigious private middle school, my mother ordered me to vacate my room as my presence was a disturbance to his studies. "How will you take responsibility if Barton fails his exams? He is studying to become a doctor, and you must support his dream," my mother said, instructing my father to move my belongings to a storage space under the stairs. My parents occupied the living room, and I had no choice but to stay in that cramped space. I endured, thinking I could return to my room once Barton finished his middle school exams. However, even after Barton passed, I was not allowed back in my room on the pretext that I would disturb his daily studies, and I ended up living permanently in the storeroom. By the time I was in my final year of middle school, my family was planning a move. They planned to relocate near the university Barton hoped to attend, though he hadn't yet been accepted. "Will I have my own room after we move?" I couldn't help but ask my mother one day. To my surprise, she responded cheerfully with an unexpected answer. "It will be tough to commute to middle school from the new house, right? So, you should live with your grandmother. Everything is already arranged." I was shocked, yet it was somewhat expected. With a successful son like Barton, my parents seemed to need nothing else. I always felt like an excess presence in the family, one that might be let go of someday. "Can I live with you again after I graduate from middle school?" I asked with a glimmer of hope, but my mother coldly replied, "No, your grandfather can't move now, and it's too hard for your grandmother to care for him alone. She's getting old, so you should help her," she said. If that was the case, why couldn't my mother take care of her own parents? Knowing that voicing my thoughts would only provoke anger, I had no choice but to keep silent. "So, there's no need for you to go to high school. Caring will keep you busy. And with your abilities, it will be hard for you to find a good job, even if you graduate." My mother actually said this to me. Although it was different from the prestigious school my brother attended, I had been diligently studying for the entrance exam of the school I had chosen. I used the cramped storeroom as my room, turning a cardboard box into a desk, studying late into the night. "Since your brother will be going to medical school, we will need more money. Once you graduate from middle school, you should work and contribute financially to the household. We raised you after all, so it's only natural," my mother stated. Being asked to leave home to provide care and contribute to the household finances was so unreasonable that it left my mind in turmoil. As I held back tears and remained silent, my mother sighed and said, "You really are gloomy. I dislike that damp disposition of yours. Why can't you be more like your brother?" Not speaking also seemed to anger my mother. I was constantly compared to my brother and felt a disappointment to her. I felt, as I always had, that there was no place for me in this house. I realized that going to my grandmother's house was the only option left for me. On the day before the family was to move, I decided to go to my grandmother's house. There was a conflict within the family when my brother tried to stop me, but I left the house as if fleeing from the situation. Carrying a few belongings, I took several trains to reach my grandparents' home. As a child, I used to visit frequently with my brother, but since middle school, my grandfather had become bedridden, and my mother had forbidden me from visiting. My grandfather was a bit stern but a quiet man, and I felt at peace in his calm presence. My grandmother was extremely kind, unbothered by small matters, and had a warm heart that accepted everything. Both of them showed equal affection towards us grandchildren, and their home had always felt like a safe haven for me. Upon my arrival, my grandmother was already waiting for me at the entrance. Despite some anxiety about our long-awaited reunion, she immediately burst into tears of emotion and hugged me upon seeing me. "I'm sorry. I've told her many times, but your mother has always been stubborn and won't listen. It's unforgivable for a parent to drive out their own child," my grandmother explained. Her words conveyed her numerous attempts to reason with my mother about this issue. But expecting more from parents who showed no interest in me was pointless. They were willing to sacrifice me for my brother's tuition and to support the household financially. Being with people who could show love was surely a way to a happier life. I decided to cut ties with my parents and stay at my grandmother's house until I graduated from high school. I was also prepared to care for my grandfather, but he passed away shortly after I moved in following a rapid decline in his health. Initially overwhelmed with grief, my grandmother said, "Having you here has saved me," and gradually began to smile again. Together we cooked, shopped, and shared laughs over daily occurrences, finally experiencing the warm, family-like moments I had longed for. As life settled and I found some peace of mind, I began to take care of my appearance, exploring makeup and hairstyles. My once chubby physique slimmed down as I grew, and I attained a slender figure like my brother. With my improved appearance, I said goodbye to my middle school self, made new friends, and enjoyed a fun high school life. Though I worked part-time to avoid burdening my grandmother, my mother occasionally called demanding money. Thanks to my grandmother standing firm, those demands eventually stopped, but I couldn't forgive my mother's actions. When I graduated from high school, my grandmother handed me a bank book, saying, "This is what you've earned, so use it for your future." Thanks to her saving my earnings from part-time jobs, I had the opportunity to consider a broader perspective for my future. After that, I planned to move to New York, desiring a typical urban life while testing my capabilities. Above all, I wanted to earn enough to express my gratitude to my grandmother. When I told her about my plans to move to New York, she smiled and agreed wholeheartedly. As she hugged me with her frail hands, my grandmother said, "It'll be lonely, but your independence is for your own good. You are a strong and kind-hearted grandchild, and I will support you no matter where you are. If you ever have any trouble, contact me immediately, and I will come to you." "Grandma, thank you so much. I'll do my best." With the warmth of family and unconditional love my grandmother taught me, I vowed to become a respectable adult and repay her kindness. 8 years have passed since then. Now, I live a busy but fulfilling life as a young, notable novelist. Initially, when I moved to New York, I worked a clerical job at a small company while writing novels as a hobby. Writing had become a daily routine for me, a way to escape to different worlds since I didn't have a place at home. I repeatedly edited what I considered my best manuscript and mustered the courage to submit it to a Newcomers Literary Award. Winning the grand prize led to my debut as an author. Since then, with a bit of luck and a lot of support from others, I have consistently produced hit works. I thought living solely for my work wasn't bad, but then I met someone special in my life. After a year of dating a partner I met through a friend, we decided to get married. I had been skeptical about marriage due to my harsh family background, but his kindness and understanding of my past encouraged my decision. My life was full, both professionally and personally, and just as I was about to start anew and try to forget the bitter memories of my childhood, my mother suddenly appeared. "Violet, oh, how beautiful you've become," she exclaimed. It happened just as I stepped out of the entrance of the condo I live in, a sudden encounter after 8 years. It felt as if a stranger had bumped into me. My mother was like someone I was meeting for the first time. She hugged me tightly and began to talk tearfully with exaggerated gestures. "It's been so long. I just had to see you. I got your address from Grandma. I'm so happy to see how wonderfully you've grown," she said. I felt uncomfortable with her demeanor, and my skin crawled at her touch. "I had heard from Barton that you became a writer, but I had no idea you were successful enough to live in such a fabulous condo. You must be doing quite well. How much are you earning?" Her sudden reappearance and probing questions only highlighted her unchanged nature, raising the old discomfort and suspicions about her intentions. Seeing my mother immediately start a conversation about money during our long overdue reunion reminded me that she hasn't changed a bit. The reason I used a pen name was because I didn't want to share the same last name as my parents. "And you're getting married, right? I heard it's to a doctor. Really impressive. I'd love to hear more about him," my mother said. It was the first time I heard praise from her, but it was only about my fiance's profession. "Barton already has his own family and says he can't spare more money for us. After all the money we spent to help him become a doctor, he only thinks about his own family. Such an ungrateful person. But you don't have children yet, and you must have some financial leeway, right? Ever since Barton stopped helping, we've been struggling. It's only natural to have one's own family. It's unreasonable for my brother to ignore his own life and continue supporting our parents." I knew from my grandmother that my grandparents had actually provided substantial help for my brother's education. Seeing my self-centered mother brought back bitter childhood memories. And then I thought, now that I'm an adult, I feel the perfect timing for revenge on these toxic parents has arrived. I intend to inflict a thorough social punishment on them, ensuring they never dare show up before me again. "Well, but I can't decide on financial matters alone. I'll have to discuss it with my husband," I said. "Oh, thank you. You really are my sweet child," my mother exclaimed happily. Seeing her trying to ingratiate herself, I forced a smile while suppressing my disgust, and continued the conversation. "Actually, my wedding is next week. My grandmother was supposed to attend in place of my parents, but I really want you to come too. I'll introduce you to my new family." "Oh, is that so? You shouldn't call your grandmother for our role. We should properly play our role as parents," my mother said. It was hard to endure my mother's words belittling my beloved grandmother, but it was the time for me to be patient. The following week, this person would no longer be able to act superior, nor would she be able to walk outside with her head held high. My grandmother was surprised when I told her that my mother had visited and what she had talked about. She was upset because she had not given my mother the address. Indeed, it had been so long since we'd been in contact, so her sudden visit was suspicious. "She must have sneaked a look at your contact information," she deduced angrily. As we discussed the special plans for the wedding, my grandmother eagerly agreed and was happy to support my proposals. On the day of the ceremony, both my father and mother appeared at the venue. Meeting my father again after such a long time didn't evoke any special feelings. I merely noted that they had aged. They seemed uninterested in me and had come merely following my mother's lead, unchanged and predictable as ever. I had previously introduced them to my husband and in-laws. Since my husband and in-laws only knew that I had been out of touch with my parents, they were surprised by their appearance but welcomed them. At the venue, we hastily set up a specific table for my parents. Instead of the usual round tables, a rectangular table usually used at the reception was placed at the very front center. It was decorated with a white tablecloth but was clearly makeshift, equipped with ordinary folding chairs. This seating arrangement was something I had specifically requested to be made, and it attracted a lot of attention. Unfortunately, I was still getting ready at the time and didn't see their initial reactions, but my grandmother filled me in later. "Ah," my mother exclaimed in surprise. "What's the meaning of this? Why are we the only ones at such an embarrassing table?" She complained to the venue staff. My grandmother tried to soothe her. It was a last-minute change, so it was unavoidable. Eventually, my parents were seated in the best seats at the front and center of the stage. People around them looked on curiously, but my vain mother mistook their gazes for envy and quickly adjusted her attitude, declaring, "Well, I'll endure it and sit here." My father showed no particular interest and immediately reached for a drink as soon as he sat down. For my shameless parents, even a poorly spotlighted seat seemed to pose no issue. The ceremony proceeded smoothly. Seeing my grandmother tear up and beam with joy at my appearance in the wedding dress made the whole event feel profoundly meaningful. During the highlight of the ceremony, when I read the letter of thanks to my grandmother, my mother initially objected to me reading it in front of the guests. However, I assured her, "There will be a time at the end for you and Dad to be introduced, so please listen carefully until then," convincing her to stay seated. While I read the letter, my parents showed no emotion and sat looking bored. There seemed to be no sense of reflection on their part about the hardships their child endured because of them. But that was fine. If they were indifferent, I would not hold back. I was no longer the little child who could do nothing but cry. "As a final point, let me introduce my parents," I said, raising my eyes from the letter to ensure they were looking, then nodded for them to come forward. As my parents eagerly stood and walked towards me, I continued speaking. "What I have not disclosed until now is that my debut novel was inspired by real-life experiences." At that moment, the venue erupted into murmurs. What? My parents seemed confused by the reaction of the crowd. "The debut novel. which won a Newcomers Award and became a bestseller, had made me a well-known young author. However, my disinterested parents seemed to not even understand the contents of that book. As those who have read my book might know, the protagonist is mistreated by their parents from a young age and ultimately abandoned. I, too, was constantly told I was inferior compared to my brother and grew up being negated in everything. Whenever the family went out, I was always left behind to take care of the house, I explained. But in my 3rd year of middle school, I was discarded by my parents and told to live with my grandmother. I was forced not just to forego high school, but to work and help support their household while caring for my grandfather. Gasps of surprise rose from the venue. It's unbelievable. After treating their own daughter like that, how can they show their faces at her wedding where the criticisms heard around? These revelations not only served to expose the truth, but also to finally hold my parents accountable in the eyes of those who had once known us as a family. Such a thing was true. Truly appalling murmurs of astonishment echoed through the room. My mother attempted a rebuttal. "Violet, don't say it like that. We just asked Grandma to help out a little with raising you." Just help out? At 15, I was driven out of the house with no support for living or education expenses. What you did was simply offload your responsibilities onto Grandma. That's unforgivable, both as a parent and as a daughter, I countered sharply. My mother, lost for words, fell silent. Just like the protagonist in my book, I too faced hardships. I didn't break down because I always had Grandma who supported and loved me. My gratitude for her is what got me through. Now, coming to me for money after all this time, I will no longer call you my parents from this point on. Please disappear from my life. With that, I made a firm declaration to my parents and poured out all my feelings, resounding through the venue. Among the audience were journalists from newspapers and magazines connected to us. Seizing the opportunity, I asked them to write about today's events and to broadcast it widely to the public. I've held back from making this public before, but now I feel it's important to expose such toxic parents to prevent other children from suffering the same fate. Also, I want to convey a message that no matter how harsh the environment, there are always people around who will support you, and that never giving up can open new paths. My call received a round of substantial applause from the audience. Camera shutters clicked as the reporters began taking pictures of my parents. "Stop it. Don't take pictures," my parents panicked, covering their faces with their arms. "Barton, help. Everyone is misunderstanding us as bad parents. Tell them properly. Tell them we're the parents who supported you all the way through medical school." My mother cried out, "That's right, we paid high tuition fees thinking of your welfare." "Tell everyone," that my father added. Even at this point, they continued to deny their faults and struggled futilely. In response, my brother, who had remained silent until now, finally exploded in anger. "Enough. Be quiet," he shouted across the hall, reprimanding our parents. His forceful intervention silenced them, marking a definitive end to their attempts to sway public opinion in their favor at the wedding. The narrative of my story, underpinned by their response, stood vindicated in the eyes of all present. With a sudden scream, my mother collapsed to the floor in shock. My father stood frozen, his mouth agape in astonishment. Seeing my usually calm and gentle brother raise his voice and yell was a sight that surprised not only our parents but everyone around. "Graduated me from medical school? Your true intent was to have me earn as a doctor. I had different dreams, but you dismissed them as unprofitable and forced the path of a doctor on me. Day in and day out, you pressured me, saying we're even going into debt for this and your sister is enduring for your sake, only adding to my suffering as a child." My brother revealed. His confession shocked me. He too had been struggling alone under our parents' pressure. "When Violet was kicked out, I truly wanted to go with her and escape to Grandma's. I was worried about Violet and wanted to leave the house too. But Grandma stopped me, saying, 'Don't abandon your situation for your parents. Do it for your own future.'" That was the first time both our parents and I had heard this. I had no idea my brother had been carrying such feelings all this time. At first I was forced into it, but eventually, I came to want to help people as a doctor. Grandma saw that in me and advised me to use even the worst parents to realize my dreams, telling me Violet will be okay without her belief in me. I would have run away instead of becoming a doctor. Now that you can't extract money from me and are even trying to profit from the daughter you discarded, it's clear there is a problem with you as human beings. I want to make it clear at this point, I am severing ties with you, so please never show yourselves to us again," my brother declared firmly. Overwhelmed by his resolute stance, our parents were left speechless. As cameras began to click once more, they panicked and started running towards the venue's exit. Their fleeing figures were also captured on camera. My brother and I exchanged a look and nodded at each other. We are adults now. No longer will we allow ourselves to be manipulated by such toxic parents. I'm sorry things turned out this way. I apologized to my husband, who had quietly observed everything. He smiled kindly in return. I am truly grateful for his acceptance and support of the plan. If it means you are freed from your past, then it's all worth it, Violet. And your brother was impressive too. He encouraged me. My husband, 7 years older than me, has always been a pillar of support, offering the words I needed. Thank you. I expressed my gratitude. 8 years since leaving home, I had overcome many challenges and finally built a family and home with someone I truly cherish. I am deeply grateful for this happiness. 7 years after the wedding turmoil. Now at 30, I am blessed with a 6-year-old son and a 4-year-old daughter. My husband, a doctor, used to have a hectic schedule but left his position at the university hospital to take over his family's clinic. This change has given him more time to spend with us. Recently, we enjoyed a family vacation with my grandmother and hosted a Christmas party with my brother's family. Celebrating Christmas together, we deepened our familial bonds in ways I couldn't have imagined in the past. It brought me immense happiness. As for my parents, the incident at the wedding attracted more attention than expected, and the backlash they received was severe. Initially insisting they were blameless, the cold stares and criticism from relatives, friends, and neighbors eventually led them to reduce their public activities. They significantly damaged their social credibility and, finding it very difficult to continue their former lifestyle, decided to move to a remote rural area where nobody knew them. In this new place, they managed with day labor while slowly depleting their modest savings, trying to live as inconspicuously as possible. However, their nature hasn't changed, and their conversations often include bragging, clearly taking pride in their urban origins, which makes it hard for them to fit in with the local community. I heard about their situation from a trusted journalist friend, and many now know of them as my toxic parents who stirred public uproar. I am convinced that cutting ties with them was a wise decision. Achieving my goals of ensuring they could not raise their heads to go outside and never appear before me again especially brought me a great sense of relief. Meanwhile, the unexpected turn of events at the wedding not only made headlines but also brought renewed attention to my debut novel, leading to an unexpected and exciting opportunity for it to be adapted into a drama. Though I wasn't fortunate with my parents, I am blessed with a wonderful brother and a loving grandmother. Now I am building a happy family life with my loving spouse, surrounded by our delightful children. I couldn't ask for more happiness than this. Tomorrow is Grandma's birthday, so let's make lots of special dishes, I called out to the children playing in the yard, and they all cheered in joy. At that moment, their bright, shining smiles and hearty laughter warmed my heart further, deepening my love and appreciation for my family.